Every single day, over 60 million people pull their multi-ton metal machines into a tightly curved concrete lane, lower their window, and speak to a disembodied voice inside a plastic box. Within 3 minutes, they receive hot food, hand over capital, and drive away without their feet ever touching the ground. To us, it's just Tuesday. It's convenience. It's normal. But if you pull back the curtain on this $2 trillion infrastructure, you realize something shocking. The modern drive-thru wasn't invented to make your life easier. It was engineered because restaurant owners in the mid-20th century were bleeding cash. They were losing a psychological war against broken glass, slow teenagers, and shifting military regulations. This is the hidden history of how a simple hole in a wall completely reshaped global architecture, transformed human psychology, and became the most profitable real estate asset on Earth. This is day one to now. To understand the drive-thru, we have to start at day one. The year is 1921. Location: a dusty highway stretching between Dallas and Fort Worth, Texas. An entrepreneur named Jesse Kirby notices that Americans are becoming utterly obsessed with their new cars. He thinks, why should people have to step out of their motorized freedom machine just to eat a sandwich? He opens Kirby's pig stand, introducing the world to the drive-in. The business model relied entirely on a new breed of employee, the car hop. These were often teenagers, sometimes wearing roller skates, who would sprint out to your car, take your order, rush back to the kitchen, and then clip a heavy metal tray directly onto your driver's side window. By the 1930s and 40s, drive-ins were a pop culture phenomenon. But behind the neon lights, the business model was an absolute operational nightmare. First, it was entirely dependent on the weather. If it rained in Chicago or London, sales plummeted to zero. Second, it was wildly inefficient. Car hops would routinely drop porcelain plates, spill sodas, and mix up orders. But the biggest killer? The real estate trap. Customers would buy a 5-cent milkshake, roll up their windows, turn on the radio, and park in a premium space for 3 hours. The restaurant's capacity was entirely capped by the size of its parking lot. Restaurant owners realized they didn't own a fast food business. They were running a free parking garage that happened to sell burgers. They needed a way to move the cars out. A few owners tried cutting basic holes in their walls to pass bags of food to drivers, like Red's Giant Hamburg in 1947. But the real breakthrough, the moment the modern drive-thru was actually born, happened in 1948 in Baldwin Park, California. Harry and Esther Snyder open a burger shack so small that it has absolutely zero indoor seating and barely any parking. Harry realized that if he wanted to make money, he couldn't let cars park. He needed them to drive through. But there was a massive technical limitation. If a driver pulled up directly to the kitchen window to order, they would have to sit there idling for 3 to 4 minutes while the burger cooked. A line of just 4 cars would back up out into the main highway, causing traffic gridlock. So, Harry goes into his garage at night. Using spare electronic parts, he engineers a homemade, 2-way intercom speaker box. He plants it in the dirt driveway, yards ahead of the window. This changed everything. Now, a customer ordered at the speaker box. While they slowly crawled forward toward the window, the kitchen already had a 2-minute head start cooking their food. Harry had invented something more important than a hamburger stand. He had invented a production pipeline. He had decoupled the moment of ordering from the moment of pickup, and in doing so, he'd solved the single biggest bottleneck in food service. That little speaker box in the dirt would eventually become the backbone of In-N-Out Burger, and the blueprint every fast food chain on Earth would copy for the next 70 years. But Harry's garage invention was still analog, still fragile, and still relatively unknown outside Southern California. It would take a national crisis and a beige plastic box from a defense contractor to turn this local hack into a nationwide standard. Fast forward to 1975. In-N-Out formalizes the concept with a dedicated drive-thru lane, but the technology that powers the speaker itself gets a strange, almost accidental upgrade from an unlikely source: military-grade communications hardware. Here's the part almost nobody knows. The clear, crackly, slightly too loud voice you hear ordering your fries isn't just a cheap intercom. The early speaker and microphone systems used in drive-thrus were adapted from surplus radio technology developed for battlefield communication, components originally designed to transmit orders across noisy environments like an airfield or a tank column. Restaurant engineers realized the same hardware built to survive gunfire and engine noise was perfect for surviving idling V8 engines and honking traffic. At the same time, a very different pressure was reshaping the industry: gasoline. The 1973 oil embargo sent fuel prices skyrocketing and triggered mile-long lines at gas stations. Suddenly, Americans became obsessed with efficiency, not wasting a single unnecessary minute or drop of fuel. Sitting in a parking lot for a car hop suddenly felt wasteful. A drive-thru that got you in and out in 90 seconds felt patriotic. Chains took notice immediately. Wendy's, founded in 1969, is often credited as the first major national chain to build the drive-thru into its core design rather than bolting it on as an afterthought. By the late 1970s, McDonald's had reverse-engineered the format at scale, and drive-thru windows started appearing not because customers demanded them, but because the economics of the 1970s left owners no choice. The window wasn't a luxury feature. By the 1980s, it was drive-thru wasn't just a hole in the wall anymore. It was a science. And the most important battlefield in that science was the menu board. Fast food chains discovered something strange through trial and error. The size, order, and even the font of items on a menu board directly changed what people bought. Put a picture of a milkshake at eye level, and milkshake sales rise. Bury a healthy salad option in small text at the bottom, and almost nobody orders it. This wasn't guesswork. Corporate headquarters began hiring behavioral consultants to engineer menu boards the same way grocery stores engineer aisle placement. Then came the obsession with the stopwatch. Every major chain began secretly timing their own drive-thrus against competitors, chasing a single number: average time from order to window. In the 1980s and 90s, that number became a corporate religion. Executives realized that every 10 seconds shaved off the average wait time translated into measurable extra revenue per store, per year, because a faster line meant more cars could physically fit through the lane during a lunch rush. The drive-thru had stopped being a convenience feature. It had become a finely tuned machine, measured down to the second, with human employees as the moving parts. Here's where the story stops being about burgers and starts being about urban planning. The single-lane, curved concrete driveway wrapping around a building seems like a small architectural detail. It isn't. That curve dictated the shape of an entire generation of American commercial real estate. Once drive-thrus became profitable, city planners and developers began designing entire strip malls, gas stations, and standalone outparcels specifically around the geometry needed for a car to loop around a building without ever colliding with another car or a pedestrian. This had a ripple effect nobody predicted. It pulled restaurants further away from walkable downtown centers and pushed them toward highway exits and suburban arterial roads, where land was cheap enough to dedicate to a giant looping driveway instead of a sidewalk cafe. Over decades, this quietly quickened the decline of pedestrian main streets in small American towns, replacing them with the strip mall landscape that now dominates the edges of nearly every U.S. city. And there's a darker psychological layer underneath the concrete. Researchers who study consumer behavior have long noted that the drive-thru window creates a strange kind of social anonymity. You never make eye contact with the person cooking your food. You interact with a speaker, then a cash register, then a bag, 3 separate faceless transactions instead of one. That anonymity turns out to be commercially powerful. People are demonstrably more willing to order indulgent, calorie-dense food when they don't have to say it out loud to another human being face-to-face. The drive-thru didn't just sell speed. It sold privacy. By the 1990s and 2000s, drive-thru dominance had become the single most important competitive metric in the entire fast food industry, eclipsing even taste and price. Chains began a full-blown arms race. Taco Bell experimented with double drive-thru lanes that merged into one before the pickup window. Chick-fil-A rebuilt its entire operating model around off-window line busting, where employees carry handheld tablets out into the queue to take orders before cars even reach the speaker box, sometimes processing dozens of vehicles simultaneously in parking lots that look more like choreographed dance routines than restaurants. McDonald's spent hundreds of millions of dollars researching headset technology, kitchen layout redesigns, and even the exact camber angle of the concrete lane to shave fractions of a second off service time. Industry trade publications began publishing annual drive-thru speed rankings, and being named fastest or slowest could genuinely move a company's stock price. This wasn't hyperbole. Drive-thru sales had, by this era, grown to represent well over half of total revenue for most major fast food brands in the United States. The dining room had become almost an afterthought. The real restaurant was the driveway. Then, in 2020, something happened that no drive-thru engineer could have ever planned for. The entire world was told to stay in their cars. When COVID-19 lockdowns closed dining rooms across the globe, the drive-thru went from being one revenue channel among several to being, for many chains, the only way to survive. Companies that had underinvested in drive-thru infrastructure scrambled to retrofit parking lots overnight, adding second and even third lanes, digital menu boards, and license plate recognition cameras that could pull up a returning customer's order history the instant their car rolled into the lane. The valuation of the drive-thru as a real estate asset exploded. A standalone fast food outparcel with a functioning multi-lane drive-thru became one of the most sought-after commercial property types in the entire country, often trading at higher price per square foot values than office buildings or retail storefronts, precisely because the land itself, the loop, the stacking lanes, the queue capacity, had become the valuable asset, not the building sitting on top of it. Wall Street analysts began valuing entire restaurant chains partly on drive-thru throughput data. The hole-in-the-wall Harry Snyder built in his garage had become one of the most economically significant pieces of architecture in modern commerce. So where does the story go from here? The next chapter is already being written, and it doesn't involve a human voice at all. Major chains are now piloting AI-powered voice assistants that take your order at the speaker box, trained to understand regional accents, background noise, and even upsell suggestions in real time, without a single employee needing to put on a headset. Some locations are testing conveyor belt and robotic arm systems that can physically hand a bag to a customer without a human touching it at any point in the process. There's also a quieter shift happening in the built environment itself. As delivery apps and mobile ordering have grown, some newer restaurant formats are being built with no dining room and no walk-up counter at all, just multiple stacked drive-thru lanes and a separate lane exclusively for delivery drivers, essentially turning the restaurant into a warehouse for cars. What started in 1921 as a dusty roadside stand for teenagers on roller skates has become one of the most rigorously optimized pieces of commercial infrastructure on the planet. A system engineered down to the second, the sticker price, and the psychology of a driver who never has to look anyone in the eye. From Harry Snyder's garage speaker box to a trillion-dollar real estate category, the drive-thru was never really about convenience at all. It was about control, over time, over cars, and over the psychology of a species that would rather idle in a metal box than walk 20 feet for a burger. This is day one to now.